The thing that was so painful for me when I first heard the story was the complete innocence of the victim and how people very close to him, people that he loved, people that he cared about and trusted, and how those people were able to conspire against him in the most brutal way possible, for no fault of his, and um, not because of anything that he had done, but just because of the, how do I put this, the sheer evil of those people around him, and he had no clue. Uh, to me, that's the most critical thing, and that's the most painful part of the story that has been difficult to deal with.
Of the last day of 2018 on December 31st, Army Sergeant Tyrone Hassel III was shot multiple times in the head and torso. Now, he wasn't even in a war zone. He was in Michigan at home with his family. If you find this story instructive, please take a moment to press the subscribe button and like the video, as this would be a positive feedback to us. Now, when Tyrone Hassel was in college, his one desire was to join the US Army, and he made everyone proud when he finally graduated from college and got enlisted into the Army. In 2015, Sergeant Hassel met Kimaya in the Army while they were at Fort Carson in Colorado together, and their relationship became serious very quickly. His father, Hassel Jr., said that when he heard about his son's relationship with Kimaya, they were already getting engaged. Now, it seems that in the very same year, Kimaya got pregnant and soon had a son. The Hassel family said that he had a good relationship with them. Now, on New Year's Eve in 2018, as Sergeant Tyrone Hassel stood near his car in the driveway of his daddy's home in Michigan, where he was staying with his wife and their one-year-old son, he was shot multiple times at close range. Now, the shooting prompted a panicked 911 call from his wife, Kimaya Hassel, who was inside the home at the time. One of the police officers who responded to the scene described Kimaya Hassel as being emotionally distraught as her husband was dying. She was actually crying loudly the whole time and trying to climb onto the ambulance as first responders lifted Tyrone onto the back of the ambulance. Now, as Kimaya had been present at home when the shooting occurred, the police had many questions for her in order to obtain a first-hand account of what happened. And they said that Kimaya cooperated with the investigation, speaking with police multiple times. On New Year's Eve, Kimaya said that she stayed at home with their young son while Sergeant Hassel was at a family party. Now, she was actually supposed to have gone to the party with her husband, but she declined. She repeatedly told police officers that she had no idea who would target her husband. Now, investigators had a couple of clues, including a neighbor who noticed a man get into a black car right after the shooting, but there wasn't much else for the police to fall on. After the shooting, a sobbing, distraught Kimaya, who had been refused entry into the ambulance carrying her husband, headed straight to the hospital and stayed with her husband for hours, even though he was already dead by the time she got there. Tyrone had been shot 6 times, and bullets hit him in the chest, in the back, and in the head. Was this a drive-by shooting, or was this a case of mistaken identity? Well, 11 days after Sergeant Hassel's killing, the investigation took an unexpected turn when police received an anonymous tip from a woman who claimed that her son was in the military and that her son knew that Kimaya was having an affair with another soldier. It is said that this woman didn't elaborate too much on that, but she did hint that there was a relationship that Kimaya was involved in that could have led to something like this. Now, according to the police, the same day that this call was made, two soldiers at Fort Stewart came forward to the Army Criminal Investigation Division with fear about one of their friends called Jeremy Kuwaya, who drove a truck on the base. Incidentally, Kimaya Hassel also drove a truck on the base. Now, one of the soldiers who had come forward, called Hamilton, told investigators that he was aware of a relationship between Kimaya and Jeremy that was kept from her husband, and that he was feeling very anxious about his own safety following the killing of Tyrone. Now, these guys knew that Jeremy Kuwaya was having an affair with their friend's wife, and no one said anything about it. It even appears that they were aware of Jeremy Kuwaya's intent to harm Tyrone, and they still remained silent. You know, not one of them made any move to alert or protect Tyrone. Well, the Army Criminal Investigation Division started their own investigation, and they conducted many interviews with soldiers who knew Kimaya and Jeremy Kuwaya. And that's when they discovered that Kuwaya had even stated to a friend that Kimaya Hassel was his girl and that Sergeant Hassel had to go. Apparently, Jeremy trusted his friend so much that he was able to disclose his evil intentions about Tyrone to them without fear. And surprisingly, they also reciprocated by keeping their silence and not taking any action, even though they knew that Tyrone was in harm's way. The CID investigators learned that one other soldier had sold Jeremy Kuwaya 2 guns prior to the shooting, and one of these guns matched the caliber used to kill Sergeant Hassel. They also learned that Jeremy had allegedly described to Hamilton how he said that he killed Sergeant Hassel. So he actually told his best friend on the base what he did, that after he shot Tyrone, he stood over him and put one more bullet in his head to confirm the killing, you know, right in his forehead. Now, Jeremy was put under CID surveillance at his home that was close to the base. His car was searched, and investigators found 9mm ammunition and another 9mm magazine, which matched the type of ammunition caliber that was found at the crime scene. The CID also provided Michigan investigators with the plate of Jeremy's car, and the Michigan team found out that the car was in the area during the time of the shooting. So Jeremy Kuwaya was arrested in Georgia on January 11, 2019, but he refused to speak with officers. That very same day, back in Michigan, investigators brought Kimaya back in for questioning. Now, initially, Kimaya had said to police when asked if her husband had any enemies, and she had responded that her husband was a good guy and everyone only had positive things to say about him. Asked as a matter of routine questioning whether she had ever had any thought of doing something bad to her husband, she had responded that he had never done anything to her that would make her not want to be with him, and even assuming that he had, she would only have to seek divorce and not think about harming him. But in any case, her husband was the only one that she had always wanted to be with. So, asked what sort of person she thinks could do something like that to her husband, or just be part of a plot to do something like that to her husband, Kimaya had responded that it would be a maniac, you know, someone that was psychotic. Now, all this time, Kimaya wasn't aware that the investigators already had sufficient proof that she was part of the plot to kill her husband. That she had been part of the plot to kill her husband. So, but she wasn't aware of that. Now, asked further what she thought should happen to such a person, she said that the person, whoever the person was, should be put away, or rather put to death, because she doesn't understand why the person should sit in jail, eat and drink, and be able to see their family when she couldn't see her husband anymore. Kimaya denied that she was involved with Jeremy Kuwaya multiple times, despite the officers confronting her with knowledge of her affair with him. As it turned out, she had indeed started having an affair early in the year, even before they were deployed to South Korea in 2018. And that was where, back in Korea, was where their affair had been discovered. Now, although her husband, Tyrone, was also present in Korea, Kimaya is reported to have refused him entry into her room during the deployment. And yet, it is reported that Tyrone refused to completely believe, hence that he probably was receiving that her wife was having an affair. During her interrogation after her boyfriend, Jeremy Kuwaya, was arrested, Kimaya was asked to take a polygraph test to prove her innocence, and thinking that she could bluff her way through that, she agreed. Now, she absolutely denied having anything to do with Jeremy, and she continued to claim that he was only someone that she talked to, just like anyone else. But after being told that she was lying and that Jeremy had implicated her and that they were digging out phone conversation records to prove it, Kimaya Hassel finally confessed. She opened up to investigators and admitted that she was having an affair with Jeremy Kuwaya, and she gave details about her role in her husband's murder. So the woman, who had appeared shattered and absolutely distraught on the night of her husband's shooting, now confessed that she and her new lover, Jeremy Kuwaya, had made plans during their deployment in Korea to kill her husband when they all got back to the US. That plan had been hatched by the two of them in April of 2018. Now, soon after they got back to the US in October, Kimaya and her husband Tyrone were granted temporary leave from duties, and they traveled from Georgia, where they were all stationed, to Michigan to stay with Tyrone's father. But Kimaya stayed in constant communication with her lover, Jeremy Kuwaya, who was back in Georgia. And when they decided that the time was right, Jeremy traveled from Georgia to Michigan with the sole purpose of killing Tyrone, and with the full knowledge and support of Kimaya. It appears that it was Kimaya who instructed Jeremy about their location, and for 4 whole days, nights, Jeremy came to stalk out Tyrone at his dad's home, where he was staying with Kimaya, to wait for an opportunity to kill him. And all those days, they remained, Tyrone, Kimaya and Jeremy remained in constant communication. And Kimaya was constantly providing and updating Jeremy with information about her husband's movements so that he could finish him off. According to Kimaya herself, whenever Tyrone came back home after stepping out, she would say to herself, "Oh, I guess that it didn't happen. I guess it didn't happen." Meaning that she was expecting her to be killed by now. And she would wait for another opportunity. So she was eagerly anticipating her own husband's murder. She would even text her lover and ask him why he hadn't shot Tyrone yet. And then Jeremy would explain that he was with someone, or that Tyrone hadn't been alone, or some other reason. So this was a woman with a baby toddler who was sleeping together, eating together, and having normal daily conversations and laughs with her husband, her baby's father, and who at the very same time was actively pursuing a plot, to have him killed. And we're talking about the same man that she had earlier said that no one had anything bad to say about. On that last night that Jeremy killed Tyrone, Jeremy had texted Kimaya to say that he was leaving the area because he hadn't had a clear shot to shoot Tyrone, and then he was going to try the next day. Now Kimaya then calls her husband to find out where he is. He tells her that he's coming back home from the party with food for her and the baby. Now Kimaya quickly calls Jeremy back and tells him to return and finish the job because her husband is returning. Now, there was a good chance to kill him now. And Jeremy returned. Now, according to Kimaya herself, Tyrone arrived with the food and they had a conversation, and he kissed her and the baby, and he went out to his car again. And that's when the shots rang out. So Kimaya rushed out, and then she put on a very impressive show of the shocked and grieving wife. Now, in the end, she signed a police confession document admitting to plotting to kill her own husband, Sgt Hassel, and was arrested on January 12th, the very day of her husband's funeral. It is fair to say that ever since that day, the Hassel family have been in shock. They couldn't believe it. Now, while in jail, Kimaya called her own mother, and admitted to the plot to kill her husband. The conversation was recorded by the jail and was used as evidence in her criminal trial. Prosecutors would also use cell phone records that showed that Jeremy, Kuwaya, and Kimaya were communicating in the hours leading up to the shooting of her husband. Now, Kimaya's attorney, Chris Castle, contended that his client was coerced by Kuwaya into going forward with the murder plot, but Kuwaya contended that it was Kimaya who called him back, who asked him to come back to the house when she confirmed that her husband was returning to bring food. Kimaya was convicted on July 18th, 2019 of first-degree premeditated murder and conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. On August 29, 2019, she was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Kuwaya pleaded guilty to second-degree murder on July 30th, 2019 and was sentenced to 65 to 90 years in prison. He later requested to withdraw the guilty plea, but the Michigan Supreme Court denied to hear his case in 2021. He was the one that actually shot Tyrone dead, multiple shots. So, withdrawing his guilty plea, don't really get it. But Kimaya also petitioned for a new trial on the grounds that she was a victim of battered woman syndrome, but the Michigan Court of Appeals denied her appeal in November of 2022. Now their son, Kimaya, and Sgt Hassel's son, Tyrone Hassel IV, lives with Kimaya's mother. Thank you for watching, and catch you up in my next video.